Let's start where it started. How did this happen?
Yeah, it's been a tough road, and it started, that first season with the Cardinals. After some injuries and a concussion and a shoulder injury I had, kind of everything I went through that year kind of got in a place where I thought maybe my career was over, or wasn't thinking straight because of the concussion I had and a dislocated shoulder, and had pain pills available to me, and took them, and eventually got hooked on them, got addicted to them, and that began a struggle that lasted 4 years for me, where I just couldn't get off. I couldn't stop taking them, whether it was to feel better when I was depressed or to get through an injury or whatever, and just kept taking more and more to where you're physically addicted and it's tough to get off of them.
Let's go back to that start, because I remember like it was yesterday. Here you are. I mean, you had a phenomenal high school career here. You almost go to ASU, then you go to BYU. Fast forward, you're with the Cardinals, and now Max Hall is starting against the defending Super Bowl champion, New Orleans Saints. Take us to that moment.
One of the best moments, athletic-wise, in my entire career. To have a chance to come back to your hometown, to play for your hometown team, to have all your family and friends there, and to play against one of my idols, Drew Brees and the Saints, just coming off a Super Bowl win. To get a chance to start and play that game and to win that game, I remember walking off that field, was one of the best feelings I've ever had.
I also remember your helmet flying off as you run in the end zone. Now,
Yeah.
That was the first concussion, correct?
Yeah.
Take us through it.
It was a play where I was going towards the goal line, and saw three defenders coming at me, but I didn't have it in me to slide, so I put my head down. The next thing I remember is opening my eyes, and Larry's carrying me off the field. And I said, what happened? And he goes, don't worry, we scored, you're good, Max, it's okay. And I was out for a while. And luckily that was right before the half, but I went at halftime, just tried to gather myself, and was able to finish the game and win. But that was the first of a few concussions that happened after that.
Okay, let's go from that point on. Now, you beat the Saints,
Mm-hmm.
You're the starter for the Cardinals, and you don't want to give that opportunity up. So what happens in the days after now, and what is your mindset after this first concussion?
Yeah, I've gotten my bell rung tons of times, and this one was different. But I was scared. I just became the starter. I just won my first game. I was afraid that if I told somebody, I would lose that. And so I kind of lied my way through the concussion test and told the doctors what I thought they wanted to hear, because I wanted to play. Looking back, that was a huge mistake. And I wish the doctors or the trainers or the coaches there kind of would have seen it. I don't know if they did or not, but I was definitely different. I was spacey, I was forgetting stuff. And I remember going into that Seattle game, being at the line of scrimmage and forgetting what play we're running. And
you get hit again.
And then I get hit again in the start of the second quarter, and I'm out again. And I remember kind of opening my eyes and kind of standing back up and kind of making my way to the sideline. And so I don't play the rest of that game. But then they start me again the next week versus Tampa. And
where were you at mentally with that concussion in Seattle as you start in Tampa? How did that week progress?
It's so much of a fog to me. It's a haze, because I had a concussion, and you're different. You're just you can't think straight. And I remember they're kind of being a little bit astonished that they were going to start me again versus Tampa. But the old football mentality and the football guy in me said, "Suck it up, let's go, be there for your team."
You're starting for the Cardinals.
I'm the starting quarterback for the Cardinals, and I seize the moment, right? Take advantage of the opportunity. So go in there and battle. And again, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I had just said, hey, I'm not right. But I went in there and tried to play, and played real good in the first quarter. Made a couple mistakes in the second quarter, and they pulled me. Were
you at that time taking medication in any way, or were you just trying to work through the concussions?
I was just trying to work through the concussions. I really hadn't started taking anything until I dislocated my shoulder a few weeks later.
And that is against the Rams. Now you're playing against the Rams. What happened?
I didn't start the game, but we were struggling a little bit, and so they put me in. This was 2 or 3 weeks after the last hit I took, so I was feeling a little bit better. And my third play in the game, I dislocated my left shoulder. And I just remember standing up, and it was just on fire. I knew something was wrong. And so now I'm back in the locker room with the trainers and stuff, and I think my career is over. I think that's it. You know, I'm done. They're gonna get rid of me and, you know, put a fork in me. And that's when now I have this. Now I have pain medication available, and I probably took, you know, I took more than I should have in the days following, and
I mean,
that's when it started.
You're in severe pain. You go to the pain medication, and this is heavy stuff. This is an opiate-based medication to thwart the pain.
Yeah. This is this is oxycodone. And not only did it take the pain away from my shoulder, but it took the stress and the anxiety and the depression away of having this injury and my career might being over. And so it was really easy for me to keep taking them. You know, it was easy to numb everything out.
As time progresses, you come back, and now you're put into the program the NFL has.
Yeah.
Explain.
So the following off season was the lockout. So we had no workouts, no anything, and I'm just continuing to numb things out. But I did, going into the season, took a drug test, and they said, hey, something's wrong here. And so they did put me in the program. And I was even scared to be in the program. I didn't want people to find out, you know, so I didn't take it maybe as seriously as I should have. But they did give me a counselor, and I went to that counselor, and I've stopped taking the pills, and I'm withdrawing from them now. And so they sent me to a doctor. They put me on another drug to help me get off the drug I was on. And
this is Suboxone, which is almost like a methadone.
Yeah.
So you can't take other drugs, but it's still an opiate-based drug.
It's still an opioid, yes. And you know, I wish I wouldn't have taken it long term. I wish I'd have done it more short term and gotten off of it and went and gotten help. But again, I was scared. This was my secret. I didn't want anybody to know.
And you have an image. Look, you were a championship quarterback here in town, and one of the more popular quarterbacks really in this state's history at the high school level. Max Hall was an iconic figure. So there's an image to sustain here. But now you're released from the Cardinals, and what happens?
So the Cardinals released me, and they don't even tell me that I'm released. So we're getting ready for OTAs, and I'm like getting ready for OTAs, and I'm like, I call my agent and say, what's going on? You know, I didn't get a schedule, anything. He can't get a hold of them, so they're kind of avoiding me. Well, I found out they had released me 3 weeks ago and hadn't told me. So now all the teams have their rosters filled, you know, going into OTAs, and everybody's like, hey, we like you, but, you know, we already got our 4 quarterbacks. So now I'm stuck. You know, all the teams got their stuff. Now I'm waiting for an injury or something. And so I didn't want to just sit around waiting for someone to get hurt. So that's when I went back to BYU. And I had just completed the NFL drug program. So I was doing well. I was still taking the Suboxone, but I was doing better. And decided to go back up to BYU and did a student coach deal at BYU.
You go up to BYU, but you still want to take another shot at playing. And
I do.
How did that play out?
You know, it's funny. I'm up there at lunch with some of the coaches up there, and an old BYU coach, Gary Croton, comes walking in. And I went over there and said hi to him and chatted with him a little bit. I did not know it at the time, but he was actually there to inquire about me. He was an offensive coordinator for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the CFL, and kind of knew about my situation. I was still trying to play, and so a couple weeks after seeing me, calls me and says, hey, I want you to come play up here. And I was excited to go play because he's the one who recruited me out of high school at BYU. And so to have a chance to go play for Coach Croton was real appealing to me, and so I gave a shot up in the CFL.
You go up to the CFL, but you're still taking Suboxone.
Yeah.
Right? Now, how did this play out? Here you are now in the Canadian Football League. You're playing games, and you're still managing this addiction. Mm-hmm. Take us inside that.
You know, it's tough when you're trying to manage that and play football because even on the Suboxone and being an opioid, it's a depressant. So I didn't have the same fire. I didn't have the same intensity. I wasn't the same person on the football field that I was, you know, through high school, through BYU, and even, you know, the first half of the season with the Cardinals. I just didn't feel the same. And so that was tough to play through that. But I still became the starter about halfway through the season. I played in some really good games, and I did real well up there. but continued to struggle a little bit managing the addiction.
You weren't the same, and how did it affect your personal life?
It affected it, because even I would every once in a while relapse and go back to it, and it was just hard. It was just back and forth, and my moods were up and down, and it worried my wife and the rest of my family a lot, and they didn't know what was going on with me, and I kind of isolated myself from everybody and stayed to myself, kept it my secret, and it just kept making me sicker and sicker, so it affected me in all areas.
Now you're not playing in the CFL, you're back here, and you're coaching high school, and I think a lot of folks want to know what happened. You're
Sure.
coaching now, you're a main figure out here, and that day happens. Take us through it.
Yeah, I was doing well. I was the offensive coordinator at Gilbert High School, and we had just won our first game, and I installed this offense, having a good time. And that's kind of one weird thing about this disease of addiction, is that it can just come up at any day, at any time. And it came up, and I relapsed. I can't even tell you why. I can't even go through the thought process of how I went over there, got the stuff, and did it, because I don't remember. It's just like a blur. You go on autopilot, and it's just like you just do it. And so I gave in that day and mixed the pills with some other stuff that I shouldn't have, and found myself in a situation that was pretty tough and embarrassing. So it was hard to deal with it. It was hard to go through that. But at the same time, it maybe was a blessing in disguise, because now my secret's out. I don't have to keep it in anymore, and I can finally go get the help I need to kind of get past this whole thing.
When it happened, there were a number of people that reached out to you.
Yeah.
Explain.
Man, when that first happened and went public, I wanted to go dig a hole and lay in it, right? I thought nobody wanted anything to do with me anymore. I shot myself in the foot, and that just wasn't the case, Jude. And for the most part, people reached out and wanted to help. And some of the biggest people that did that was my quarterback coach at BYU, Brandon Doman, Chad Lewis, and a professor I had at BYU, Doug Witt. And I remember I turned my phone off for a couple days because of the craziness. When I turned it back on, those three guys were on the phone. And so I called them back, and they had gotten together and figured out a place for me to go up there in Utah. And really they just kind of huddled around me.